remember, that movie was 130 minutes long. It was a lot of music. I would say it was over 90 minutes of music. And it was a lavish movie, an expensive movie.
The year is 2006, a film that took 25 years, 3 collapsed production attempts, 2 dead collaborators, and nearly 800 auditions finally makes it to a screen. It earns 8 Oscar nominations, more than any other movie that year, and then the Academy tells it to sit down. That is not the weird part. The weird part is everything that happened before the lights came on. The fights behind the closed doors, the stars who ran, the ones who stayed and nearly broke, the woman buried in history whose real story the film couldn't bring itself to tell. Stay with me, because by fact number 21, you are going to look at this movie completely differently. These are 21 weird facts about Dreamgirls, and some of them have never been properly told until now. Fact 1. The film took 25 years to reach a cinema screen, and nearly died 3 separate times. Let's start with the foundation, because nothing about this film's existence was inevitable. The original Broadway production of Dreamgirls opened at the Imperial Theater on December 20, 1981. It was directed and choreographed by Michael Bennett, the same man who had already defined American theater with a chorus line. The show ran for 1,521 performances. It was a phenomenon. And from almost the first night the curtain rose, Hollywood wanted it. The film rights sat with producer David Geffen. 3 different production attempts were launched over the next 2.5 decades. 3 of them collapsed, 2 of them spectacularly. The version you watched in theaters in 2006 was the 4th attempt. 25 years, 3 failed versions, 1 film. And here is what makes that number heavier. The director who most deserved to make it never got to. By the time the cameras rolled, he had been dead for nearly 19 years. Fact 2. The director who started the film died before it could be made. Michael Bennett did not just direct Dreamgirls on Broadway. He built it. He shaped the staging, the emotional architecture, the way the story moved. After the show opened and became a sensation, Bennett held on to the intention of directing a film adaptation. He wanted it made. He worked toward it. He never got there. Bennett died on July 2, 1987. He was 44 years old. The cause was AIDS-related lymphoma. The disease took him in the same decade that claimed so many artists. Howard Ashman, who would later become attached to the second attempt at the film, would die of the same cause just 4 years later. The version of Dreamgirls that finally reached screens in 2006 carries a closing dedication to Michael Bennett. He is in the credits of a film he never made, in memory of a film he never stopped wanting to make. That dedication is not a footnote. It is the whole story compressed into a single line of text. Fact 3. Whitney Houston killed the first attempt by demanding to sing Effie's songs. After Bennett died, David Geffen moved quickly. He attached writer and lyricist Howard Ashman, who would go on to define a generation of Disney animation through The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, to write the screenplay. The project was being built around one central star, Whitney Houston, who was set to play Dina. That much makes sense. Whitney Houston in the late 1980s was arguably the most powerful female voice in pop music. Her casting seemed like destiny, but Houston wanted more than the role of Dina. She wanted Effie's songs. Specifically, she wanted "And I Am Telling You I'm Not Going," the second-act showstopper that is not just the emotional spine of the show, but the entire reason the show exists. Reassigning that number to Dina would have been like removing the engine from the car and putting it in the trunk. The architecture of the entire musical is built around Effie delivering that moment. Geffen refused. Houston would not move. The negotiation collapsed. Then Ashman died in 1991. With no writer, no star agreement, and no workable script, the first attempt was finished. Whitney Houston walked away from a film that could have been one of the defining performances of her career, and the reason she walked was that she wanted someone else's spotlight. Fact 4. Joel Schumacher almost made it in the 1990s, with Lauryn Hill and Kelly Price. The project did not stay dead. It never does when the money is real. By the late 1990s, Warner Brothers held the film rights and attached director Joel Schumacher, coming off Batman Forever and A Time to Kill, to lead a second attempt. This version was a sharp departure in casting vision. Instead of Whitney Houston as Dina, the role was set to go to Lauryn Hill, fresh off the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, one of the most culturally dominant albums of the decade. R&B singer Kelly Price was attached to play Effie. Think about that casting for a moment. Lauryn Hill in 1998 was at the absolute peak of her cultural power. Kelly Price had a voice built for exactly this kind of material. The version that could have been is worth mourning. But Warner Brothers released the Frankie Lyman biopic Why Do Fools Fall in Love in 1998. It failed at the box office. The studio read the result as proof that musical biopics no longer worked and shelved Dreamgirls indefinitely. Two completely assembled casts, Houston's version, then Hill's version, had been built and discarded for the same film. The idea of Dreamgirls as an unmakeable film was starting to feel less like bad luck and more like a pattern. Fact 5. Bill Condon auditioned 783 actresses for the role of Effie White. When director Bill Condon finally secured the rights and began production in earnest, the search for Effie White became one of the most exhaustive casting processes in modern Hollywood history. 6 months, 783 auditions. Let that number sit with you. The role required someone who could carry the dramatic spine of the entire film, deliver one of the most demanding vocal performances ever written for Broadway, and hold her own in scenes opposite Beyoncé, Eddie Murphy, and Jamie Foxx. The casting team went wide. Early frontrunners included Fantasia Barrino, who had won American Idol the previous year. Former Disney star Raven Simonet came in. Broadway veterans Kapathia Jenkins and Patina Miller auditioned. Even actress Yvette Nicole Brown, who would later gain recognition from the television series Community, was in the running before being redirected to a smaller role as Curtis Taylor's legal secretary. Jennifer Hudson auditioned multiple times. She was not the obvious choice. Condon has admitted that he was not immediately confident in the decision. He went with Hudson because, in his own words, he simply did not believe any of the others. The 784th audition was the one that convinced him. Fact 6. Jennifer Hudson was a 7th-place American Idol finalist who performed on a Disney cruise ship. Here is the part of the story that sounds like it was written for a movie, which is appropriate because it eventually was. In 2004, Jennifer Hudson placed 7th on Season 3 of American Idol. She did not win. She did not finish in the top 5. The season was won by Fantasia Barrino, who walked away with the title, the recording contract, and the tour. Hudson left the show with no agent, no manager, and no guaranteed path forward. She kept working. She performed wherever the work was available, including a stint as a character performer on a Disney cruise ship. That is where Jennifer Hudson was between American Idol and Dreamgirls, singing on a ship. When the Dreamgirls casting opened in 2005, both Hudson and Fantasia came in to audition for the same role. The winner of American Idol was an early favorite. The casting team was initially leaning her direction. Hudson auditioned multiple times before Condon chose her instead. Fantasia called Hudson after the decision and joked, in what Hudson described as a genuinely warm phone call, that Hudson had stolen her part. The Idol winner did not get the role. The 7th-place finisher did, and the 7th-place finisher won the Academy Award. Fact 7. Jamie Foxx initially turned the role down because DreamWorks wouldn't match his salary. Curtis Taylor Jr. was the most powerful male role in the film. the Berry Gordy figure who builds an empire on the backs of the women around him. The first choice to play him was Jamie Foxx. Foxx declined. He had just won the Best Actor Oscar in 2004 for Ray, and his asking price had moved beyond what DreamWorks was prepared to pay. No deal was reached. The role moved on. The second name on the list was Denzel Washington. Washington turned it down for a different reason entirely. He could not sing. The role was written to incorporate vocal performance into the dramatic arc, and Washington had no interest in taking on a part that depended on a skill he did not have. That is a level of self-awareness that deserves its own acknowledgement. The producers also approached Will Smith and Terrence Howard. Neither took the role. Eventually, once Beyoncé and Eddie Murphy were both attached to the project, Foxx reconsidered. He came back on his second pass and accepted. The Curtis Taylor that audiences saw on screen was the fifth or sixth name on what had been a very long list. Fact 8. Beyoncé lost 20 pounds in 14 days using the Master Cleanse. The Dina Jones that audiences see at the end of Dreamgirls is not the same Dina they meet at the beginning. The story spans roughly 20 years. Beyoncé was asked to play her character at 16 and again at 36, and the two age ranges were filmed 2 weeks apart. Rather than rely on makeup and costuming to create the visual transformation, Beyoncé decided to physically alter her body during that window. She followed what is known as the Master Cleanse, sometimes called the Lemonade Diet. The entire regimen consists of 4 ingredients: lemon juice, maple syrup, cayenne pepper, and water. No food. Just the lemonade mixture, consumed 6 to 12 times a day for the duration of the cleanse. No solid food for 2 weeks. Beyoncé lost 20 pounds in 14 days. She has spoken about it publicly on multiple occasions, including in an interview with Oprah, where she confirmed the details while also being explicit that she would never recommend the diet to anyone unless they were making a film and working under proper medical supervision. After the shoot wrapped, she gained the weight back almost immediately. The transformation was real. The discipline required to create it, for a 2-week shoot window, for a character arc, is something most people would not survive past day 3. Fact 9. Bill Condon made Jennifer Hudson deliberately be rude and show up late to sets. Effie White is one of the most difficult characters written for an American musical. She is demanding. She is late. She is hot-tempered, unapologetic, and absolutely certain of her own worth, even when the world around her is dismantling that certainty piece by piece. Jennifer Hudson, by every account from the production, is none of those things. She is warm, professional, and deeply considerate of the people around her. So Bill Condon made her become Effie before filming began. After the main rehearsal period wrapped just before Christmas 2005, Condon called Hudson back for a separate week of one-on-one sessions. The week was not about line readings or blocking. It was about behavior modification. Condon instructed Hudson to deliberately be rude to people, both on set and off. He told her to arrive late on purpose. He wanted her to live so completely inside Effie's diva personality that the performance would not require her to act it. It would simply require her to be it. Hudson followed the direction. She was rude on purpose. She showed up late on purpose. People on the production who did not know what was happening were genuinely confused by her behavior. That confusion was the point. By the time principal photography began on January 6, 2006, Hudson had built an internal architecture for the character that could not be manufactured in front of a camera. The technique was unconventional. The result was a debut film performance that won the Academy Award. Fact 10. And I Am Telling You was scheduled for 1 day and took 4. If you have seen this film, you know the scene. If you haven't, stop reading and go find it. It is one of the most physically raw vocal performances ever captured on film. The scene was scheduled for the final day of principal photography. Condon had deliberately saved it for last, giving Hudson the maximum amount of time to grow into Effie before having to deliver the moment that the entire film had been building toward. Jennifer Holliday's original performance of the number on Broadway in 1981 had stopped the show every single night. The bar was not low. One day was not enough. Hudson's voice would give out after roughly 4 hours of takes. A hoarse Hudson could not lip-sync the studio recording. The emotion in the performance and the raw state of her voice were inseparable. Condon went back to the studio and requested more time and more budget to finish the scene properly. The production agreed. The single most important scene in the film cost 4 times its original scheduled budget. Shooting wrapped 4 days later, in the early morning hours of April 8, 2006. The scene that audiences have watched and re-watched for nearly 2 decades was never supposed to take more than a single afternoon. Fact 11. 2 original 1981 Broadway cast members were hidden in the film. This one is for the people who are paying close attention. Bill Condon attended the original Broadway opening of Dreamgirls on December 20, 1981. He knew the show's history, its cast, and its legacy in a way that was personal rather than academic. When he made the film, he hid 2 members of that original cast inside it. Loretta Devine, who played Laurel Robinson in the original Broadway production and would later become a familiar face on Boston Public and Grey's Anatomy, appears as a jazz singer in a nightclub scene. The casting was deliberate. Devine originated the same role that Annika Noni Rose plays in the film, and Condon brought her back as a quiet, knowing handoff from the original character to the new one. Hinton Battle, a Broadway veteran who served as a summer replacement for the role of James Thunder Early during the show's original run, plays Curtis Taylor's loyal aide Wayne in the film. He is the second bridge. Both choices were placed in plain sight. Neither was announced. They were quiet gifts planted in a film for the audience members who already knew the names. A tribute from one generation of Dreamgirls to the next. Fact 12. Costume designer Sharon Davis built 120 dresses by hand for the 3 lead actresses. The visual identity of Dreamgirls, its particular brand of sequined, era-specific glamour, did not arrive by accident. Costume designer Sharon Davis built it from the ground up. The scope of what the production required was enormous. The story spans 13 years. It moves through multiple distinct eras of American music. It follows 3 women whose look has to evolve from amateur talent show contestants to international superstars over the course of 2 hours. Davis designed and built 120 original dresses for the principal actresses. That number does not include the dozens of suits she designed for the male leads. Her reference points for the look were deliberately wider than the obvious Motown touchstones. She drew from Cher, from Aretha Franklin, from Prince, from Marvin Gaye. The blended influences gave the costumes a heightened, performance-oriented quality that pushed the film beyond period reproduction into something more expressionistic. Bill Condon publicly called Davis one of the film's primary storytellers. Her work earned her a second Oscar nomination for costume design. Every single silhouette, shoulder line, and sequined gown that audiences associate with this film passed through her shop. Fact 13. Eddie Murphy won every major precursor award before Norbit destroyed his campaign. For most of the 2007 awards season, the Best Supporting Actor Oscar was not a competition. It was a formality. Eddie Murphy's performance as James Thunder Early had produced the kind of critical and industry reception that most performers spend an entire career chasing. He won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor on January 15, 2007, beating Jack Nicholson, Brad Pitt, and Mark Wahlberg. He won the Critics' Choice Award. He won the Screen Actors Guild Award. He received his Academy Award nomination. The category appeared closed. Then, on February 9, 2007, 16 days before the Oscar ceremony, Norbit opened in theaters. The comedy starred Murphy in multiple roles, including a fatsuit performance as the overbearing wife Rasputia. The reviews were catastrophic. critics described the film as racially insensitive, mean-spirited, and aggressively unfunny. It scored 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. The industry conversation around Murphy shifted overnight. The man who had seemed untouchable 2 weeks earlier was now the punchline of the awards cycle. Alan Arkin won the Oscar for Little Miss Sunshine. Murphy lost every vote he had spent 6 months building. The phrase, "the Norbit effect," has since entered Hollywood vocabulary as permanent shorthand for detonating your own campaign. No single film has more completely defined how a comedic performance can retroactively collapse a dramatic one. Fact 14. Eddie Murphy left the Oscars before it was over, and the real reason took 18 years to come out. When Eddie Murphy lost the Oscar, the cameras caught him leaving the Kodak Theater before the ceremony had ended. He missed Jennifer Hudson winning Best Supporting Actress for the same film. He missed the performances of all 3 Dreamgirls songs nominated for Best Original Song: Listen, Love You, I Do, and Patience. For 18 years, the story that circulated in entertainment press was that Murphy had stormed out in anger. It was accepted as fact. It became a piece of Oscar mythology. Then, in early 2026, while promoting his Netflix documentary, Being Eddie Murphy, Murphy spoke publicly about what actually happened. He explained that after the loss, Clint Eastwood came over and rubbed his shoulder in sympathy. Other guests kept approaching him to offer consolation. Murphy made a quick calculation. If he stayed, he would spend the rest of the night absorbing pity from an entire room of his peers. In his own words to Entertainment Weekly, he said he was not going to be the sympathy guy all night. He left to protect his own dignity rather than perform grief in front of an audience. The walkout was not a tantrum. It was self-preservation from a man who knew exactly what the rest of his night would look like if he stayed in his seat. 18 years of mischaracterization. One interview. The actual story. Fact 15. Dreamgirls received 8 Oscar nominations, more than any film that year, and was not nominated for Best Picture. Read that sentence again. Dreamgirls led the entire field at the 79th Academy Awards in total nominations. 8. More than any other film released in 2006. The nominations spanned Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Sound Mixing, and 3 nominations for Best Original Song. 3 songs from the same film in the same category. Not one of those 8 nominations was for Best Picture. The 5 films nominated in that category were Babel, The Departed, Letters from Iwo Jima, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Queen. The Departed won. Every one of those films received fewer total nominations than Dreamgirls. The film that led the Academy's own ballot in total nominations was simultaneously told it was not one of the year's 5 best. Of its 8 nominations, Dreamgirls won 2. Jennifer Hudson for Best Supporting Actress and Best Sound Mixing. The omission from the Best Picture category remains one of the most discussed exclusions in Oscar history. It shaped conversations about what the Academy was willing to recognize, and what it would acknowledge but not celebrate. Fact 16. Diana Ross refused to watch the film. The character of Dina Jones is widely understood to be a fictionalized version of Diana Ross. The character of Curtis Taylor Jr. maps closely onto Motown founder Berry Gordy Jr., with whom Ross had a long professional and personal relationship. The story of the Dreamettes mirrors the story of the Supremes, including the way Florence Ballard was pushed aside and replaced in 1967. In April 2007, 4 months after the film opened and collected its awards, Diana Ross gave an interview to the Detroit News. She said she had not seen the film. She did not intend to see it. She publicly distanced herself from the project and described it as not her story. That is a statement worth sitting with. The most decorated female solo artist in Motown history, the woman whose career and relationships form the emotional architecture of the entire film, chose not to watch it. She had spent decades building and controlling the narrative of her time with the Supremes. She was not going to allow a Hollywood musical to revise it for a new generation without her input. And since she had no input, her response was simple. She would not engage with the result. The film never received her blessing. By her own account, it never received her viewership either. Fact 17. The song Listen was written for Beyoncé, after she said her character needed a showstopper. There is a moment in Dreamgirls where the film essentially stops and hands Beyoncé the stage. That moment is Listen. It was not in the original Broadway production. It was not carried over from an existing catalog. It was written specifically for this film, specifically for Beyoncé, specifically because Beyoncé made the case that Dina Jones, as written, did not have a defining moment of her own. She was right. The original structure of the musical belongs, emotionally, to Effie. Dina is the counterweight, the woman who chose the empire over her friend and lived with that choice. Without a song that showed Dina's internal fracture, the character risked becoming a two-dimensional foil. Henry Krieger and Anne Previn wrote Listen to fill that gap. It became one of the film's 3 Oscar-nominated original songs. Beyoncé's vocal performance on the track became the most commercially successful element of the entire soundtrack. The song that Beyoncé argued should exist became the song most people associate with her in this film. Fact 18. Jennifer Hudson's film debut remains one of the only times an untested actress won the Oscar. Think about what Jennifer Hudson was when Dreamgirls started filming. She had no film credits. She had placed 7th on a reality television competition. She had spent time performing on a cruise ship. She was auditioning for her 784th chance at a role in a film full of established stars. And she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in her first feature film. That almost never happens. The Academy does not typically celebrate debut performances in that category. There is an implicit understanding that awards go to careers as much as performances. Hudson had no career to reward. She had one performance. The performance was enough. What makes the fact weirder is the context. She was surrounded by Beyoncé, who had already achieved global superstardom, by Jamie Foxx, an Oscar winner, by Eddie Murphy, who was himself in the conversation for the award from the same film. Hudson stepped into that environment with no credits and left with the highest individual honor the industry awards. She has never returned to that level of recognition. The debut remains, in many ways, the single most extraordinary performance of her entire career. Fact 19. 3 songs from the same film were nominated against each other for Best Original Song. The 2007 Oscar race for Best Original Song was, depending on your perspective, either a celebration of Dreamgirls or its most counterproductive achievement. Listen, Love You I Do, and Patience, all 3 from Dreamgirls, were nominated in the same category on the same night. All 3 competed against each other. The vote was split 3 ways among the film's own songs. None of them won. The award went to I Need to Wake Up from the documentary An Inconvenient Truth. There is an argument that having 3 nominations from the same film in the same category is a remarkable achievement. There is an equally strong argument that it is how you guarantee none of them win. The Academy's voting structure in that category means that 3 strong songs from one film will divide support that would otherwise consolidate behind one winner. Dreamgirls effectively brought a knife to a gunfight by bringing 3 knives. Fact 20. The original Broadway Effie, Jennifer Holliday, had a public and painful reaction to Hudson's casting. Jennifer Holliday originated the role of Effie White on Broadway in 1981. Her performance of And I Am Telling You, I'm Not Going had stopped the show every single night of the original run. She won the Tony Award for Best Actress in a musical for the role. The performance is embedded in Broadway history as one of the great singular vocal achievements of the 20th century. When Jennifer Hudson was cast in the film adaptation, Holliday's reaction was not quiet. She gave interviews expressing her feelings about being excluded from the process. She had expected at the very minimum to be consulted, possibly to be offered a role in the film. She was neither. Condon's production moved forward without involving the woman who had made the role legendary. The tension was real, and it was public. Holliday and Hudson would eventually meet and reach a degree of peace on the matter, but the original wound, the sense that the woman who built the role had been erased from its film history, did not disappear quickly. It added a layer of complicated feeling to every review of Hudson's performance that season. Fact 21. Bonus: The Real Woman. Effie is based on Died at 32, Broken Forgotten. Everything else in this list is strange and fascinating and sometimes sad. This one is different. This one is the thing the film could not bring itself to say. Effie White is a fictional character. Florence Ballard was real. Ballard was the founding member and original lead singer of the Supremes. The group began as a Detroit teenage quartet called the Premettes, the same way the Dreamettes begin the film. As the group climbed toward national fame, Berry Gordy made the decision that Diana Ross had more crossover appeal to white audiences and began pushing Ballard into the background. The parallels to the film are not loose approximations. They are nearly exact. In July 1967, Motown fired Ballard from the group during a Las Vegas residency. Cindy Birdsong took her place on the stage that same night. The Effie firing scene in Dreamgirls is the Ballard firing scene with different names. What the film does not tell you is what happened next. Ballard's life after the Supremes contained no reunion, no triumphant final act, no standing ovation. She battled depression and alcohol abuse through the early 1970s. She pursued solo recordings that found no audience. She filed lawsuits against Motown over money she believed she was owed. The lawsuits failed. She lost her house. She ended up on welfare. Florence Ballard died of cardiac arrest on February 22, 1976. She was 32 years old. She was broke. She had no money, no hit record, no industry recognition. The woman who stood at the center of one of the most successful girl groups in American music history died largely forgotten by the industry that had built its own fortune on her voice. The happy ending. Dreamgirls gives Effie White, the return to the stage, the vindication, the final song, is not a story that existed for the woman who lived the real version. It is the ending the filmmakers wished had happened. It is grief dressed as resolution. 21 facts, 25 years, 783 failed auditions before the right one, an Oscar campaign that a comedy destroyed in 2 weeks, a real woman who died at 32 without anyone making a movie about her pain until she had been gone for 3 decades. Here is the question worth sitting with after you close this video. Is Dreamgirls a tribute to Florence Ballard? Or is it the final erasure? Does giving her story a happy ending honor what she lived through? Or does it make it easier to forget how it actually ended? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell us which film deserves the same treatment, because some stories are too big to let go of, and some facts are too strange to stay buried. The dreams have spoken, the curtain is down, and if an I Am Telling You is still playing in your head right now, it means Jennifer Hudson did exactly what Bill Condon needed her to do.